Okay, so welcome, folks. We're here for the Parents of Murdered Children. We're going to call this Chapter 5. I've titled this, Grief Doesn't Expire, Neither Should the Sentence. So that'll give you an idea of the direction that I go with in this show, right? And we'll be discussing the California Senate Bill 672, among other things. And this is a trigger warning. This episode contains graphic and emotional distressing content, including discussions of violent crime, murder, and hate crimes. Listener discretion is strongly advised, especially for survivors and families of victims. Please take care of yourself while listening. And like I said, welcome to the show. I'm your host. I'm a father, survivor, and advocate continuing this work in honor of all that we've lost and in honor of my son, too. So today's episode is a little bit going to revolve around California Senate Bill 672, which I wanted to bring up, as known as the Youth Rehabilitation Opportunity Act. This proposed legislation would allow more than 1,600 individuals, including those sentenced to life without parole, to be eligible for parole after 25 years if they're under the age of 26 when they committed their crime. So here we have Kathy, and she is the head of the chapter leader of the LA POMC, and I have to say that she is appearing on her own free will. She is not representing the POMC. We are just having a conversation about something that we have, unfortunately, in common. So, Kathy, please introduce yourself. Speak about whatever you'd like to, please.
Okay. Yes, my name is Kathy Familetti, and although I am the leader of the Los Angeles chapter of Parents of Murdered Children, I'm not speaking on behalf of that. I'm speaking as a survivor of homicide. I am actually a 4-time homicide survivor. 37 years ago, I lost my nephew. Unfortunately, 33 years later, the perpetrator was released after 6 parole hearings. I have a cousin, domestic violence, who will be going through parole soon on her husband who killed her, and then the other 2 were my cousins, and because of the gang affiliations of the perpetrators in those cases, the chances of them ever getting out are slim, but you just never know in the state of California what's going to happen. So legislation changes things in many ways, so we don't know. Time will tell if reputed gang members will get out or not. I can say that I was 30 years old when my nephew was murdered. I didn't have any children of my own. All my nieces and nephews were my babies. I changed them, I fed them, I clothed them, I watched them, I took them to school, I went to their events, all the way to their graduation, every graduation they ever had, Little League, whatever it took, they were all my babies. And when Anthony was murdered, it was devastating. It was, I couldn't believe it. This was one of the best kids that have never been in trouble, and an acquaintance killed him. Somebody that later said he was a good kid and he didn't deserve it and he was a friend, and although they grew up in the same neighborhood, Anthony was doing him a favor and he still shot him in the head, which we believe was a gang initiation. And at the time, we were able to get him into adult court. And so he got 27 to life, and we kept him in for 33 years. But I know a lot of families that I've encountered over the years that are very, very impacted by these laws where juveniles are only being held until they're 25 years old.
Right.
And that's one issue under Prop 47 and Prop 57. And then the other issue are issues like SB, 672 or 620.
Yeah, 672, and actually, it's also deals with the sex offenders to be released after 20 years in custody once they turn 50 years old.
Right.
So that was. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. Yeah, but these laws they're insane, and I understand that 672. There were parts of it written to kind of like focus on certain murderers and certain things, which it accomplished, and they won't be released. But it leaves open a very huge, vast majority of us that aren't police officers, or it wasn't a sexual crime, or it wasn't a hate crime, to the rest of us, and the murderer was under 26, it's going to impact us. So we're very unhappy about it as, survivors of homicide. It opens that door one more time for us to be re-victimized,
Right.
And working with families like ours, this legislation, and it repeatedly re-victimizes us when we think they get life without parole, but it really isn't life without parole because they get a resentencing hearing, or because they were under 26, now they can be released at this, or they're elderly parole because they're this age and they did this. All of this is ridiculous. They committed first-degree murder or second-degree murder, and they should stay in there for the rest of their life, period. They
Right.
didn't rob somebody, they didn't take their car, they killed somebody. And it's just insane, the laws that we have in place.
No, 100%, and it would include Sam Woodward, who was 20 years old when he stabbed his former high school schoolmate Blaze Bernstein 28 times, and then buried his body in the Lake Forest Park in 2018. This happened locally.
Yes.
Woodward, a member of an extremist neo-Nazi terrorist group, targeted Bernstein, who was openly gay and Jewish. In 2024, Woodward was found guilty of first-degree murder in the commission of a hate crime and sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. That guy would qualify.
Well, I have to,
That guy could qualify at the age of 50 if he does everything right. He gets out.
I think I can correct that, because I understand, in talking with some individuals in Sacramento, that there has been some amendments to the bill that if it was a hate crime, like in that case,
Right.
he would not qualify. But the amendments, even though it was just voted on, I understand that the amendments are coming out. So I want to, let's see what the amendments for sure are. But I understand the amendment was said if it was because specifically a hate crime, he would not qualify.
Right.
But without the amendments, yes, he would.
Right.
So let's see, and then there's some other ones like police officers and sexual child abuse and some other amendments that were supposed to come out at the end of the week. So we'd have to do our research right now to see what those amendments are.
I think it's interesting because I was looking at it, and it's like a daily dose of reality I wrote, because SB 672 was co-authored by Senator Susan Rubio out of Baldwin Park. She's also the one who co-wrote Peaky's Law. So that was just interesting to me. It was like two different ends of the spectrum there, kind of, I don't know. Okay. So this is my opinion. Who comes to a politician, a constituent, who comes to a politician and says, my son is a pedophile, but I think he needs leniency. Can we draft a bill to where he might qualify for parole? Who came to that politician and said, this is a good idea? Or are these guys writing these things on their own?
I don't know.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I know.
Think about it that way.
I know, and I know the senator, and I'm at odds too. I don't understand.
I know her too out of research.
Yeah,
only,
I know her because of Peaky's Law. I
Right.
worked on Peaky's Law.
Exactly.
Right? Personally, I worked on Peaky's Law, and I applaud her for what she did on Peaky's Law.
Right.
I'm at a loss right now, and I'm not understanding. But speaking to some individuals, I understand that some of those amendments are in place to
Kind of address that.
to address some of the things that are in there that are heinous to us, But I don't think it's overreaching, and I'm not sure why she would even have authored it. But I haven't talked to her directly, so
Right.
I don't want to, because I
would
do-
imagine it would be a difficult conversation.
it's gonna, yeah, it is gonna be a difficult conversation
Right.
with Senator Rubio for me, but I think I have a friendship enough to say, why? and what? Because you're such a strong advocate
Kathy, I'm
generally
sorry,
for
I had no idea you had a connection to her. I didn't mean.
No.
But
This is reality. This is it.
Exactly.
Okay, like you said,
Right.
this is real. And I want to have a conversation with the senator because I have this relationship with her, and she's been such a strong advocate for victims
Right.
that I'm trying to understand why she would
Why?
even.
Where's this curveball coming from?
Where did this come from?
How did you
and
jump
why?
on board to this?
And why? But I also found out about some of the amendments, but it isn't far-reaching enough because there's an audience of us that are going to still be affected by this bill, and I want to understand why. And I haven't had this is all in motion right now. This bill.
Sure.
So I haven't had a chance to have a conversation with her.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, I left a message for her chief of staff this week
Right.
to talk to him, and I'm sure he's been busy to talk to him about this bill
Sure.
because it concerns me. So I have to be as fair as I can be at this point until I talk to the senator.
Right.
But as it reads, am I happy? No, not at all.
Yeah, like you said, to reiterate what you said, we're not dealing with white-collar crime. People who commit crimes maybe out of need or out of need to eat or something. These are people who are committing rapes and murder. And then you're considering that, okay, well, let's show them some leniency. These are, like I've said before on the show, I've said this until I'm blue in the face, ad nauseum. These are different people. These are the scum of the earth. These are people who wouldn't do what you and I would do. I'm telling you, because if you would, you would have done it. We're not the same people. We don't think the same. We don't belong in the same population. Those are different people. You know, those are. Look at the people who are on death row for murder. You want them as your neighbor? Think of it that way. And I'm not saying judge a book by its cover, but look at their parole sheet and let that guy get out of prison, let him somehow move next to you or you. Imagine that. Imagine that. See, the part of this show is for me to fully illustrate the details of murder and the repercussions afterward. And here we are. I think that with parole meetings, those are all people looking at sheets of paper. They're not looking at the crime scene. And I've said it before, they're not looking at the shotgun that was used to shoot that person 4 times and looking at the bloody body. I hate to say it that way,
No,
folks.
it is.
I hate to say it that way. But the details of murder get lost when they go to parole because now they're looking at a report card for someone who got A's for the last 10 years.
And that's why.
But before the 10 years, they did this, and look at the pictures. You know why I know? Because I sat through the pathology for my son's trial, and I looked at the pictures, and I watched the videos. Okay? So, do me the favor, and why don't you look at the same things I did? And then try to come to the same conclusion that that person now qualifies for parole just on age.
Right. And I understand because I've been through parole hearings and the importance of the commissioners having the right information. And I mentioned earlier that our past district attorney in LA County was not allowing the DAs to attend or bring the files to the parole hearings. And like you say, without that information there, they don't have
They
a
get
complete
one side of the
picture.
story.
Yeah,
They get a
only
report
get
card.
one side.
That's
Where a
it.
DA there will say, no, wait a minute, Mr. Commissioner, this happened or this happened or that happened. So it is important, and it's just unfortunate that we live in a state that is very left-leaning, and when it comes to public safety, we've got a bleeding heart. We believe in restorative justice, which I don't.
Right.
Obviously, if it's a low-level crime.
Restorative justice, literally, I've looked this up, their own statistics show that people who are convicted of murder and rape and all these other violent crimes, when they get out,
Do it again.
60% of them reoffend within the first 3 to 5 years with another violent crime.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So 3 out of 4, and they're pushing for this. The guy, the other author, I forget his name, out of San Jose, they've got a murder rate up there like crazy. And he's pushing for this. Oh, yeah, this is a great idea. Who came to that guy and said, hey, dude, this is a good idea.
Right.
Let's push this Senate bill. This is necessary for the state of California to be safer.
Well,
And they always say, oh, it's be safer. This is a safety thing.
we've got a lot of
Just like when they release 60,000 criminals, nonviolent offenders, 60,000 of them during COVID. Now, what I say is, okay, nonviolent for that offense, but look at their rap sheet. They don't have any violence in their rap sheet? Not at all, huh?
Right.
Interesting.
We've
Okay.
got a lot of laws on the books that are totally wrong, totally wrong. And the reality is, in many cases, the people that are writing these bills have never lived what we've lived through.
Right.
So they have bleeding hearts. They feel like, okay, everybody deserves another chance.
Kathy, this
And in the-
can't be explained. It has to be experienced.
It has to be experienced.
There is
you
no
know.
explanation.
There is none. There is none. I watched my brother for 37 years cry his eyes out for his son, and it's been 37 years. I watch people every day go through it. I watch it. There's none. You can go to Compassionate Friends. You can go to bereavement for this. You can go to this group, but only other people that have experienced homicide know what we feel: the anger, the pain, the frustration, the devastation that somebody felt that they had the right to take your loved one's life.
And close
know?
the book on that chapter.
Yeah.
Like me, I had so many things opened with, I call them chapters open with my son, that we'd never talked about. We had a very bad relationship when this happened. There's so many things that I will never be able to discuss with him. The repercussions from murder need to be displayed and recanted so that people understand, wow, that wasn't just the murder. Look at all this that's still happening afterward. This guy there's discussions I'll never have with my son. Never be able to reconcile with him. Never be able to have him say I'm sorry or me to him. Those things need to be discussed because that's the reality of murder, and that's what's taken from us, right? When that happens, because they're abruptly taken. It has to be experienced. It cannot be explained.
Kind of on that note, I'm a lifelong Democrat, and in so many ways, I believe in what's going on. I mean, I believe in their platform, in so many ways. I'm a proponent for this immigration stuff. I mean, my family immigrated from Mexico, and I don't like what's going on. The fact that we take care of our elderly and our poor, but when it comes to public safety, we're on the wrong side of that. But on that note, I was
100%.
very, very active, and I'm not right now, I was very active in the Democratic Party. And I sat on the state resolutions committee for the party. And the resolution came up to give a felon the right to vote back. And I voted against it, and I spoke against it. And out of 1,200 delegates, about 400 of them agreed with me. But my issue with that was I told them, look it, my nephew Anthony will never vote for Trump or Biden.
Right.
He will never vote for anybody.
Right.
So why should a murderer...
His ability to vote was permanently removed.
His ability to vote was permanently taken away.
Mm-hmm.
Why should he have the privilege that Anthony doesn't have anymore? And to
Right.
me, it's a privilege to vote. He took it away. So, even at that level, I was advocating for survivors and and those of us and our loved ones, Obviously, at the Democratic Party, I got overruled, and I'll be honest with you, in many ways, it's because they see them as votes,
Right.
okay? The felons that can vote when they come out, are
Of course they're gonna vote
They're going to
for
vote
the ones that got
on the
them out.
party that helped
Come on
them,
now.
right? And so, in many ways, I'm moving towards the center. But, there's other reasons. I'm still a Democrat. I'm a hardcore union member. And between the two parties, the unions are going to protect the Dems are going to protect the union more than the Republicans are. And that's just history for you.
Sure.
But when I've had to, I've stood up. I stood up against George Gascon. I participated in the recall. I participated by supporting another candidate against him. And he was a Democrat. I didn't care. I had to do the right thing when it came to public safety. And
Public safety, law and order, that's where I jump off. I'm with
exactly.
you, I'm very liberal. But man, when it comes up to public safety and law and order, what are you doing?
Yes.
Like I said, who comes to the politician and says, I've got a good idea?
Yeah. Yeah.
How does that happen?
Right. we've lost our mind. I mean, I'm going to put it this way: we have lost our minds, and we live in the wild, wild west now with law and order and public safety. And when I was advocating for one candidate over another who I felt was going to have more public safety in mind for us, I would tell people, you know, forget anything else. First of all, you got to get to work. Second of all, you got to get your kid to school.
Yeah.
Third of all, you got to be able to go to the market.
Yeah.
You want to go to the movies once in a while with not feeling unsafe.
Right.
So you have to vote for a candidate that you feel is going to stand for law and order, because we're so out of control with this liberal when it comes to public
When
safety.
you tell these violent criminals that they have an expiration date on their sentence by, oh, you qualify for parole, they go through the system. They know exactly what to do. They're going back to school. They're being told, they're being led through everything, right? And they graduate. And they know they're going to get out by a certain age. And you know, guess what? That rap sheet is now that's like their resume. Mm-hmm. Okay? And in prison, believe it or not, there's a pecking order and everything, and they rise through the ranks there too. They do just fine in prison. They do just fine. The guy who murdered my son, Miguel Ochoa, while he was standing trial, he was arrested for narcotics distribution.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Anyway.
all right.
Hi,
Do you have a few minutes?
I do.
Okay.
Just
Please
wanted-
introduce yourself, and
My name is Ninette Roman.
hi,
and-
Nina, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Surviving.
Surviving.
My daughter was Jeannie Samayoa, and is Jeannie Samayoa, not was. She's still my daughter wherever she is right now, which I know she's in heaven. And her life was taken by a murderer that stole her laptop. Her life was not worth the laptop. I mean, she was not dealing with a really nice people. She got involved with bad people. And I kept telling her, you need to change your friends. Oh no, they're nice, Mom. They're nice to me. But of course, that nice guy brought another person that didn't know her, and they decided to steal her laptop and shoot her in the head. And they are now, luckily, the detectives and the DA did a great, awesome job, and they are now all in prison, 25 to life. But I was under the impression that life was life. But I'm now learning that it's a possibility that in 25 years or less, I don't know.
Now you're learning it doesn't mean anything.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So I had to, when I gave them my impact statement, I said, I really don't care what happens to you guys. I'm just going to move on with my life and the absence of my daughter. But now I do care. I do care that they don't get out. I don't want them to experience what my daughter cannot any longer. The shooter has a daughter the age of my daughter, and I want him to know that whenever he sees his daughter, I want him to picture my daughter's face. You know, I want him to feel the absence of that person that he shot in the head for a laptop. I know my daughter wasn't, doing anything that wrong to deserve to be murdered. She was 27 years old, and she had just like a month before said, Mom, I want to go back to school. I want to get, back in shape and track. And she was very smart, but too smart for her own good. So thank you for letting me share this. And
Of course.
I will be following more with Kathy because she has been there for me and for 400 families that are in this POMC chapter.
That's 400 folks. That's 400 families out of just one chapter in LA. And I come from Orange County. And I don't think I've had this discussion with Deb on how many families are out there. But there's over 40 chapters?
There's 46 chapters
46
across
chapters
the country.
across the country, folks, with 400 members being members of just one chapter.
Yeah.
And every day, there's an unfortunate addition or two or three to each chapter, I'm pretty sure,
Unfortunately.
right?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
One of the things I'd like to bring to the attention is the crisis of unsolved cases.
Right.
You know, in LA County alone, I understand there's like over 12,000 unsolved cases. That's sort of evenly between LAPD and sheriffs and all the other little cities, you know,
And
incorporated.
Kathy, every year, I'm sure that doesn't go down.
No, it doesn't go down.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's because of, you know, the lack of manpower, honestly. You know, I
Right.
work closely with law enforcement, and the lack of manpower and the volume of cases is
Right,
what's
of
hard.
course.
And resources, you know. The legislature needs to focus on these unsolved cases. And that's not to mention the 270,000 across the country that are unsolved. Right.
Wait a second. Think about those numbers. Okay. 270,000? How many murderers are out there?
Exactly, 270,000. And how many more have they committed besides the one that we know about, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
all the legislators at all levels, county, city, federal, whatever, this is a crisis that these murderers are walking out on the streets, and who knows what else and how many more they've committed. And we need to focus on resources and provide resources to the law enforcement, to the DNA labs, to the coroners, to everybody that can help solve these murders, because they cannot. And the victims are victimized when the murder occurs. But every day that the murder goes unsolved,
Right.
they're re-victimized.
No, that's 100%, because I also say this, and I'll say that ad nauseum too. A smell, a song, a voice. Now with social media, you go on social media, you see a picture, that can bring you back to day one like that. So I can tell you right now that's how it is.
Yes.
And I've been, how many years am I in this now? 2000, now it's 2025, 5 years. Let me tell you right now that in the last week, I've had one of those instances where I had to stop everything and just sit. And I always say people only cry when they're alone. Well, guess what I did? Okay. Because day one shows up randomly, triggered by God knows what. You know, so that's very true.
No. And
We do get re-victimized every day.
Exactly. And the unsolved murders have to be addressed. It's not fair. It's not right. It's not right that these cases aren't solved. And I will never, yeah, granted, there might be some detectives that don't, you know, that don't put as much as they should, like in any organization. They don't put their all, or, you know. But I have to say, with working with law enforcement, in my personal opinion, you know, the high percentage of them, they do care. They just don't have enough manpower. They don't have enough time in the day. I learned something
It
interesting.
is lack of time in the day. I
Yeah,
I
yeah.
say that all the time. I wish the day was 40 hours long.
Exactly. And it didn't hit me until I sat in a 7-week trial. And during that 7-week trial, the 2 detectives were in there for 7 weeks, working with the district attorney to be there to make sure that they did everything they could and to be able to answer questions on the spot to the DA to make sure they could get a conviction. Well, where they're in a trial 7 weeks from 9 in the morning till 4:30 at night,
Dealing with a
they're
murder
not
trial.
they're working on one case.
Right.
They're not able to work on their other cases.
100%.
Right? So when
And
you
that's
work-
one detective.
That's 1 or 2 detectives.
Right.
So if they have a caseload of 15, 20 murders, they're not able to work on there when they're in that trial. And someday, hopefully, they're going to be on your trial, and they're going to spend the 2 weeks or 7 weeks or whatever it takes. And I have to explain that to survivors all the time, but it didn't hit me, did the realization, whoa, and there's only so many of them. You know, all of these law enforcement are so understaffed and overwhelmed with the volume of unsolved, cold, and the ones that are occurring daily. you know, and until we could get more, and you don't become a seasoned detective overnight. It
No.
takes time
Right.
to put you in the homicide department, right? So there's so many moving parts in this that we just need help from our elected officials, our legislature, to put finances and resources into our labs, into, it shouldn't take 6 months because the labs are understaffed or underfunded. We need to have more labs. Put some labs in California. I believe most of the DNA labs, we got to send them back east. Well, finance them right here in California,
Right.
you know, so that we could get the results back faster, you
There's
know?
DNA labs in California.
Okay.
There has to be.
You know,
There-
I don't know the details, but I
Right.
understand there's not enough and there's underfunded and, you know, all I know is that we're not prioritizing the unsolved murders in this country, and we need to.
Who came to the politicians and said it's a good idea to underfund that department?
I have no idea.
Right? If you think about it that way.
The priority.
How did they come up with that? And say, oh, well, this is the department we're going to cut from first. It's law enforcement. They do it every time. It's law enforcement and fire departments, law enforcement and fire departments. Every time. And if you look at those two departments in a government setting, they're one of the departments in a government setting that actually function. Firefighters go and fight fires, and they do their job. Police go out and police the streets, and they do their job.
Right.
It's a government-funded thing, and it actually functions, but they're the two agencies that they just hack.
Yeah.
And they limit the funds, and it's a political tool, it's a weapon. They weaponize that information.
And you know, you hear that right now, like the sheriffs and LAPD, they're working double shifts because they're so undermanned. They're having to work double shifts, and there's many suicides in law department because they can't handle it. It becomes overwhelming. They're trying to do their job, but they can't work double shifts over and over and over, and they can't carry the caseloads, and they can't, you know.
I've had this conversation with Moises Castillo
Yes.
at length.
Uh-huh.
And I actually asked him, I said, how do you do it? He's like, I almost turned to alcohol.
You do.
And,
They do.
he's that
Yeah.
guy's put together.
Yeah.
And, man, I can only imagine. You're seeing the worst possible outcomes in life.
Every day.
Constant. Yeah.
Every day.
They're the murder police. That's the one thing they see every day.
I
right?
mean, to go to the coroner's office regularly and view the bodies and view the cases and then go to the trials and then day after day after day, and then to try to go home and have a normal life, you know, and
I
your
don't think
family
so.
doesn't understand it.
Right.
So, you know, I have to be a defender. Yeah, there's a small portion that maybe don't give their all, but I think overwhelmingly, they all want these cases solved. It's just a myriad of problems.
No, Moises is a genuine guy.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
pretty sure he.
It's just a myriad of
I'm
problems.
pretty sure he wished he
that-
could put the Superman logo on.
But
and
we
just go
all
right
do.
to it.
We all do.
Right.
I wish we all could just jump in and solve I want all close to 140 of my cases solved, and whatever I can do to, you know, I work at night.
Right.
4 or 5 nights a week, sometimes 6. And then I still give 30 hours a week trying to help survivors, you know? And it just, I go and I go and go until sometimes you just like, I can't do it anymore. I need a weekend off. I need a
Yeah.
day off, you know? I need to just watch Lifetime for a whole day and get away from it, you know? And I'm not a police officer. I can't imagine being a detective, being a district attorney, that has to
No,
live
that
this
side has got to
day.
be overwhelming.
It's got to be overwhelming.
Overwhelming.
And I'll tell you, I have met very few that I didn't feel they cared.
Right.
They just, you know,
At that level,
it's
yeah.
got to be overwhelming. I think they all want to solve the cases.
Right.
And we get frustrated with them. And understandably, it's our case, it's our loved one. And they understand that. No, it's like, you know, hey, Kathy, I know their frustration. I know they're mad at me, and that's okay. They can be as mad as they want as me.
Yeah.
I am working their case. You know what I mean? I understand, but it's frustrating, you know. But we just got to this country has to put more resources into our law enforcement, in particular,
Law and order.
solving crime.
Law and order.
Yes, we got to have
Plain and
law.
simple. You
It's
can't.
insane.
You can't skirt law and order.
No.
Repercussions and the consequences. Law and order, repercussions and consequences.
Yeah.
You can't skirt any of those. You can't, because here we are talking about this. And I don't know whose idea it is, but
Lucy?
Hey, Lucy. So, so a little bit about Lucy. When my first meeting that I came here, she was here, and I heard your story. So it's nice to see you again.
It's nice to see you.
Let's move it a little bit closer to the microphone. It's a little. It
My
can be.
voice too soft.
No, that's better. All right. So Lucy, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. This is a great day. It's a beautiful Saturday. My corn at home is growing great, and so are my sunflowers, and my garden's doing great. That's what I do to mitigate my stress, folks. Just to let you know.
Is that what you did for your son?
No, I've been an avid gardener since high school. I took horticulture classes for two whole years, and it stuck. I have chickens and all that. Yeah. I've got a farm at home. All right, Lucy, introduce yourself and please speak about whatever you'd like to, please.
My name is Lucy McDowell. My daughter, Keishandra Gatlin Kesey, was murdered March 29, 2023. Her birthday was March 18, so it was 11 days after her birthday. She was planning on moving, and she was leaving a situation that wasn't good for her, that she had been in for a long time. There were 4 people at her house that night, and we don't know what happened. She was stabbed in her house and in the neck. I haven't read the coroner's report. My niece and her friend have, because I don't want to read the situation. They tell me, they describe some of the scenery to me, but that's not the way I want to remember her.
Right.
So Kesey was a mother of 2. She was in a bad situation. She was coming back around. We were becoming friends. She was coming over every Sunday for dinner. She was showing up for her youngest daughter's games and everything, so she was coming back, being present. She was transforming back into the mother she was supposed to be. And somebody took our second chance away. She was supposed to be here to take care of me. We were supposed to sit down and laugh about this crazy stuff that she did. She would never be a grandmother. She would never see her daughter's trials or tribulations. When she died, Carmela had just graduated from elementary school, and there was an empty chair with her name on it. Last month, Tia just graduated from college. There was an empty chair with her name on it and some flowers. So people always say, "You're so strong." It doesn't take strength. People really look at it, and you don't know what people are going through. I would say that I'm strong, brave, and broken all at once.
You are brave.
Brave because I have to be present for my granddaughters and my other grandkids and my son. I can't be broke. I am broken. I know that my heart is broken, and this will be a pain that I will never get over, because this hurts all the way down to your soul. And I will have a broken heart for the rest of my life. And just like that, somebody changed our lives. Not only my life, my son's, my grandkids, the people that she was connected to. Just like that, for what, 5 seconds? 5 seconds of anger. You couldn't walk away.
Right.
And to do it in her own home.
Do we know anything about the person who did it?
We don't know. We've had press conferences.
Mm-hmm.
There was a billboard from Justice of Murdered Children.
Okay.
We had a $50,000 reward, and still nobody's came forward.
Let me ask you a few questions, okay? Because this is going to go on air, and people can listen to it. So what was the date of the murder?
March 29, 2023.
And the time?
Well, they say 11 o'clock. I
At
guess
night?
that's when, in the morning.
Okay.
That's when the police were called.
Okay. And this
And I
happened
was
at her.
calling her that morning
Yeah.
because she was supposed to take the dog to go get shots, and I was calling her to tell her to meet me at the house, and I would take her, and then I would take her to work, but she never picked up the phone. And then her friend had called me and told me to come to her house. And when I pulled up, I seen the yellow tape, and the detective came out and told me that I'm so sorry.
And that happened in her home.
In her home.
And no one knows who she was with or who she was associating with there earlier.
Well, there was 4
Give me an
people.
idea. Is it an apartment complex? Is it?
It's a duplex.
Okay. No one in that duplex heard or saw anything.
Nobody
No one
saying
across the street.
anything.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I get you. I get you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Lucy, what do you do?
What do I do?
What do you do to deal with it?
Well, POMC is my new family. Justice for Murdered Children is my new family. Carson Bereavement's my new family. Glory Christian. That's my new family. And trying to be there present for Carmela and Tia. Tia is doing good. Carmela is a challenge because she's the youngest one.
Right.
And she doesn't know how to handle her emotions. So, of course, I have to be strong, stay 10 toes down, and fight the battle.
Lucy, thank you so much. Like I always say, folks, that was bad, and the story before that was bad enough. Every one of these stories is no better than the last one. And that's why we do this. We illustrate the murder and the details so that when it comes time to legislate for parole or something to that effect, possibly, maybe these details, maybe we can steer things in a certain direction. You know, maybe we can be the voice, and I'm my son's voice now. You know, and this is the best that we can do. The alternative is to lay down and do nothing,
Right.
and that is unacceptable.
I think for us, the beginning is, first of all, once it gets solved, well, even before it gets solved, she is Kesey's voice right now, trying to get
Absolutely.
it solved, right?
Right.
And then when we get them to court, she's going to be an advocate for her daughter there. And then after that, we as a group, as individuals, as survivors, is we have to not give up and work on changing laws and going to talk to legislatures, legislative people, you know
That's
what
the
I
one thing
mean?
I've come across is everybody kind of tries to do something.
Something.
You do what you do. Deb does what she does. I'm trying to do this. There's other parents. There's people who form charities on their own, you know, foundations
Right.
in name of their children,
Right.
and they give donations out for troubled teens and things like that.
Exactly.
Everybody, I've noticed that it's a very proactive. Like, no, we need to do something. We can't just
Yeah.
sit here.
There's many people that turn their pain into strength and activism afterwards, you know, because they feel like, I don't want this to happen to anybody else, and how can I make a difference? How could I change something? Like Peaky's Law, you know,
Yeah.
Anna turned it into her pain into strength, where Peaky is not going to be impacted by this law, but other children will, because of the difference it might make.
And it had
you
to
know.
be done.
It had to be
And
done.
it had to be done because that was a problem that these people who were hearing the cases
Yes.
weren't familiar. They could have been doing,
Corporate-
property law like the week before, and they're all, hey, come here, this case over here for murder.
They had no
you know
training
nothing
in
about child
family court-
abuse.
nothing about
Nothing
family
at
court
all.
or
No
nothing.
family court training here. Just hear the case.
Exactly.
We have cases.
So, and that's how things get changed. For the good or the bad, is somebody advocating
Advocating,
for it, right?
absolutely.
And that's what Anna did, and that's what we're doing for our loved ones and for each other. And, you know, there's a handful of us that are going to do it in different ways, whether it's supporting another mother or a father or it is going out there and getting legislation changed, or right now at this level, it's just getting CC's case solved, you know? We're all playing a role in what's happened to us, you know?
Well, just to close out here, we're going to, I'd like to just point this out. I forgot to bring this up. The co-authors of SB 672 are Senator Josh Becker out of Menlo Park, Senator Maria Elena Durazo out of Los Angeles, Senator Caroline Mejevar out of Van Nuys, and Senator Sasha Paris out of Pasadena, and Susan Rubio out of Baldwin Park, which we already discussed. All of them thought this was a great idea. Let that sink in for a little moment. And on that note, we'll end the show. Thank you so much for being guests on my show. To the listeners, thank you so much for listening. This is the fifth episode, and we intend on continuing to go press on, as I say. You take the word depression, move the letters around, it says I pressed on. So keep that in mind. We'll talk soon. Till next time.